G'day, g'day, fans. How'd you think of that rendition of the old Docky Who theme there, Mr. Aron?
Well, it's pretty amazing. We've been able to bring an exclusive, never before heard version of it that is going to actually feature on the next episode of the show, Jodie Whittaker's final episode.
Are we doing this again, are we? Very, very cool. Now, for those who don't know, good old Greg's joined us. Good to see Greg is paying attention to what's going on. The reason why I'm wearing headphones tonight is because I've actually got people in the other room right now watching this, hopefully on the YouTube channel. So, and I thought because there's a 7-second delay, the last thing I want to do is hear myself. And I'm sure nobody else wants to hear me either. So here we go. What do you reckon, old son?
It's been an interesting pre-show build-up, hasn't it? I've been mooned twice already.
You have indeed. So there you go. So for those who are wondering, the Spankins are out in the other room. Who knows, at some point they may make an appearance, but we'll cross those bridges if they should happen to occur. Yay, team. Gavin said it's Docky Who time. By the way, Docky is D-O-C-K-Y, and I can say that with authority because I made up the term. But the Terrible Twins. So there you go. Come on, Gavin, get with the program, son. Stop spelling stuff wrong. But good old Williams here.
There's always one good-looking twin and always one ugly twin, isn't there? And I'm afraid I'm the ugly twin tonight.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Yeah, he's been chasing too many parked cars. Anyway, so very, very quickly, we're here tonight. We're actually it's a special episode. Even though I've got guests in the other room, we're here to talk about the old Docky Who episode from last week, Legend of the Sea Devils. Yay, team. So how exciting is this, Mr. Aron?
Yep, so it's an exciting time for Doctor Who fans because what is acknowledged by a lot of people as one of the worst eras of the show is slowly spluttering to an end. And we're in the last couple of episodes of Jodie Whittaker with Chris Chibnall as the showrunner. And we weren't really going to do reviews on Doctor Who, and we were going to use this show probably coming back for Obi-Wan, but so many people wanted Dags to watch an episode and give us his thoughts on it because he hasn't watched Doctor Who since the 70s. We've come back out of hibernation early, much like the Silurians, and we're doing an episode on Doctor Who.
Yeah, the irony being, of all the people to do a review on a Doctor Who episode is somebody who doesn't watch Doctor Who. And as pointless as this will be, yes, there is spoilers in this. We've got to tell everybody by default. So, yeah, very good stuff. Now, I watched this episode. It obviously aired a week ago. And unlike Aaron, who's watched this multiple times because he's such a nerd, I only watched it once and I've forgotten most of it already. But it is all very groovy. I'm going to let Aaron drive most of the conversation tonight because it's clearly more his forte than mine. But we'll see where everything ends up. I don't even know the names of the characters. There's somebody called Tash? No, Tash is in the other room. Yaz?
Yaz.
And who's the dude?
There's a character called Doctor Who.
I knew that part. So you got hang on, let's just say Yaz, right? And who's the dude in the pirate suit?
That's Dan.
Dan, all right, very good. Good to see him up to speed with this. I'm sure people are just shaking their heads already. So, very good. All right, over to you, dude. Feel free to yap on about the old Docky Who. For everybody out there watching, feel free to give us your thoughts and views. And
for anyone who's watching tonight, this is probably going to be a more negative review. So if you don't like hearing negative things about Doctor Who, you could probably switch off now. But I will talk about some of the things I liked first. The Sea Devils are a classic monster from Doctor Who. They were in the original show in the 70s and the 80s. They have quite an amazing design for their time. They were one of the few monsters that actually looked good for men in suits in the original series, and they look pretty good in this. They haven't been changed too much, which I think is one of the sins that current Doctor Who does. When they have to resurrect an old monster, they change it so much it sort of alienates the original fans a little bit. Now, that's just me being a gatekeeper and a crusty old guy, because I know that current audiences do like to see probably better special effects than we grew up with in the 70s and 80s. The Sea Devils haven't been in the show since 1980. The Silurians, which were the cousins of the Sea Devils, have been in the new series, and they totally redesigned them to the point where I can't recognize them as Silurians by anything but name only. So this story, The Legend of the Sea Devils, and basically it's a quasi-historical one where the Sea Devils are in ancient Japanese waters and territory. They're looking for an amulet thing that's going to help them take over the Earth again. And this is the story that we've watched and we're going to review tonight. Now, sorry.
Geez, I'd love to try and get a word in. If you don't mind, umpire, just because I've got nothing to say doesn't mean I've got nothing to say. So we look at this from the point of view, from my point of view, I'm a complete outsider, as was mentioned, right? So I don't watch Doctor Who. And I don't dislike it. I just don't have no interest in it. So I've got to say, when the Sea Devil guys popped up, I actually did think they were done very, very well. I found it interesting that they talked through the box and the chest rather than through their mouths. I thought that was an interesting sort of twist. But as we sort of discovered later on, I mean, they really didn't do that much and they weren't really as important to the story. They weren't like, I guess, for something that hadn't been around for such a long period of time, you think, well, they could have done a bit more with them. But unfortunately, they kind of just came and went and there was really no characterization build up. There's no particular one dude that we focused a whole lot of energy on. So that, I think, was a bit of a missed opportunity. So, yeah.
I think the disappointing thing about this for me, the Sea Devils are one of those sort of unique Doctor Who villains where the backstory for people who don't know it is they were here before the humans and the Earth was going to be destroyed because they thought what became the moon was going to crash into the Earth and destroy life. So all the lizard people went into hibernation and they never woke up again. And then when they did wake up, the monkeys had taken over. So this is a really interesting concept. Unfortunately, in this episode, it really could have been any monster from Doctor Who. It could have been called Legend of the Ice Warriors or Legend of something else, and the plan could have been pretty much the same and it wouldn't have had much effect. So I think when you bring back an iconic monster, it's probably good to have a story that's tailor-made just for that monster. And this, it was a bit disappointing. And being called the Legend of the Sea Devils, Dags, what was the Legend of the Sea Devils?
Yeah, I got no frigging idea. So,
why it was called the Legend of the Sea Devils. And, I would have, being me, I'm just going to say how I would have opened it. Dan works in a museum, of course, and it would have been fantastic if they had started at walking through the museum looking at exhibits on Asia or something and going, oh, the terracotta warriors, and then the Sea Devil statue. And there's a big thing, the Legend of the Sea Devils with the story, and the Doctor sort of going, okay, well, we better go back to ancient China and take a look at this. Then, learning the legend of the Sea Devils, like how they interacted with the local people and build on that sort of mystique of them. From the trailers we originally saw, I didn't know if there was just going to be one Sea Devil sort of acting as a rogue Sea Devil or a pirate interacting with humans or a lot of Sea Devils. And it turned out there are a lot of Sea Devils. They added powers to them or abilities that I don't know why they did it. For example, you get the Sea Devil jumping from the beach onto the deck of a ship. No explanation how they can, do that. And then you've got the Sea Devils that can transport through smoke, almost like a transporter, which again has never been explained or seen in any of the stories before. And I did think that whole thing did throw up some story issues where at the beginning, one Sea Devil can jump onto the deck of the ship. At the end, when the Sea Devils are trying to take over a ship, they have to crawl up the outside of it really slowly. Now, Dags, you have said a couple of times you haven't really been interested in watching Doctor Who much, and you haven't seen it from the 70s. What did you think? Was it a bit of a culture shock after such a long time? Tom Baker to Jodie Whittaker?
Yeah, first thing I struck, because I've never watched any of this stuff, right? So for those who are Doctor Who fans out there, just deal with it. First thing I discovered is that she speaks really quickly with a really thick accent, and I actually struggled to understand what she was saying. But by that same token, I thought, I'll let that lie. I actually thought there were extra companions because I had seen some clips previously a few years ago, and like 10,000 people following that. She had these Yaz and Dan. The other thing I found interesting is she changed her costume as well. I thought doctors, for the most part, kept the same outfits the whole way through. And she originally started off with a big coat with the top with the stripes on it. and then she's wearing something completely different. And so I didn't understand what the deal was with that. It's only a minor thing, but I thought the Doctor's costume is a pretty iconic thing. And I like Tom Baker pretty much had the same one for all his, was it 7 years or 8 years, whatever he was. So I was surprised that they did that. And I'm sure there's a reason for it. But yeah, it took a while for me to get used to. But I thought, you know what, I'll take it at face value, look at it from an outsider's point of view, saying if I'm a first-time viewer, because you had seen the trailers, you said you thought the trailer looked really good, the story looked really good, and I thought we'll give it a whirl and we'll see what happens. And we went from there. So there was a few things I had to sort of adjust to very early on.
Yeah, well, you are right. The Doctor does usually wear that coat with the top. She's been in that 90% of the time. I do think they had a little bit of joke at the start where they were talking about wearing, you know, the period costumes, and it was a bit like fancy dress because the Doctor came out and she was wearing the different outfit that she's in there, and they joked about Yaz had dressed Dan, and of course he looked more like a pantomime pirate than an actual pirate, and that's of course probably a nod to Back to the Future 3, where the Doc dressed Marty as kind of the idealized version of a cowboy rather than the real thing. So I did think, you know, it was a little bit funny. It had been done before, and Dan actually went with it. Like Marty McFly was a bit embarrassed, like, oh, should I be wearing that? Dan's like, I like this, and I've got the hook with me too. So I guess that was a good way to embrace it.
Ads has said, yeah, it was wash day. Yeah, it's nothing clean tomorrow. Very, very cool. And Gavin asked if Tom Baker ever washed his scarf. Well, I mean, the Doctor may have, but who knows? But anyway, look, that was about it. So I thought, okay, fine. We're in 1807 or whatever the year happens to be. We're in the village. I mean, I'm so used to now to watching movies where they go, if you're dealing with things in the past of an oriental nature, you do them in their own language and you subtitle it. So having them speaking perfect English, sort of, I had to readjust my brain with that one a little bit. Other than that, I thought, okay, we'll give it a whirl. And they're talking about the thing with the statue and all the rest of it. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm getting it. We're getting there. And it was all, off we went.
Yes. So the thing with the statue, the statue is where the Sea Devil has been kept as, I don't know, in prison or in stasis. You don't know if he was in stasis voluntarily until he found what he was looking for, or if someone had trapped him in there. And it wasn't quite clear if he was a stone version of a Sea Devil that had been changed, because when the statue cracks and he's released, you see the statue's eyes move and blink. And I thought, oh, he's going to transform into a Sea Devil. But then it cracks open and explodes, and you can see from the legs there was a hollow inside where, you know, maybe the Sea Devil had been put. So they never explained that. They never explained the corner of the statue, the pirate queen who was looking for a map to find the treasure that was the MacGuffin for the episode. She hacked away the corner, and that released him, even though they didn't really explain how he got there or how that released him. And I did think, because the whole way through the episode, they were looking for the lodestone. So I thought that's what they were actually looking for. But that turned out to have nothing to do with the plot at all for the rest of the story, which was a bit maybe confusing or weird. Did you notice that?
There was clearly a lot of areas where it was rushed and a lot of jumping around. I mean, one of the things that I found straight away is that there's a rope trap somewhere, and it was never established that anything there was there to start with, and other characters were appearing out of nowhere and all the rest of it. And you can clearly see there's a lot of rush and speed involved where there should have been a bit more time spent on things. And I thought, okay, so they got this thing with the statue. The lady's turned up. She's bashing the crap out of it. It falls apart. The thing comes out. And I'm thinking, all right. And as I said, I watched this a week ago, and I've actually forgotten a lot of it. And I was like, all right, I'm already like losing it. And I thought, well, maybe previous people who've been watching other episodes may think, yep, we're all completely in the zone with what's happening. But I found it was a little bit confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Sea Devil is released and summons more Sea Devils. The ship, like the Flying Dutchman, turns up to pick him up. The Doctor and Yaz get into the TARDIS and pursue clues back in time, 200 years. Dan and one of the villagers swims out into the ocean to the Pirate Queen's ship, and she has no crew, and she manages to overcome them and tie them up and hang them upside down in one of those, you know, we're not going to show you how she did it, and we're not even going to explain how she did it. There's one scene where they're talking to her saying you've got no crew, and then the next scene where they're hanging upside down. Now, obviously, you can take that as a bit of a joke where it just shows she's a real badass, but it does come across as a bit. It's just happened for the sake of the plot rather than actually something that would be realistic.
Yeah, totally agree with you. It didn't make sense whatsoever. You go, and I thought the same thing. So how the hell did you manage to do that? So,
yeah, if you look
but
at
you're
that,
right. All right, suspend reality. Away we go. So yes.
If you look at that picture there, though, something that is interesting through the whole episode is there is a really bad use of green screen or blue screen, and
Yeah,
see,
I saw it. Yep.
the fringing is really bad. Even when they're sitting on the beach, you would think, they could sit on a beach somewhere. Now, this episode was filmed during the lockdowns, and I think you can tell because often in scenes, there's not a lot of people in the scene. You sort of have scenes where the Sea Devils are killing one person at a time or chasing down one person. And I guess that's could be an artistic decision by the director, but I do think it's more we had to film this in lockdown, so it's the best we could do. I think, though, did you want to add something, mate?
Oh, sorry, you finished your statement.
I think, though, a lot of it is down to the editing. It was some really weird decisions on how they edited the show, seemed to loop stuff in. And for people who are not sure what looping is, after the show is filmed, they get the actors back to re-record dialogue if it's not clear or they need to add stuff. And there's some real scenes where it's really obvious that the characters talking was not on set. It's been added later. A couple of times I noticed that, and it's really distracting.
Yeah, first things first. I totally agree with you with the whole thing with the compositing. It was really, really evident that they've done it on a green screen studio. Now, admittedly, Doctor Who, even way back in the old days, was always looked a bit dodgy. But these days, you really can't afford to do that. You've got to make the quality look good, otherwise, people are going to be able to see through it straight away. Which is, you got to up the quality, as it were. A couple of things that people have said, and I agree with what Gavin said. Gavin said about having, instead of hanging them upside down, just tie them up. It's like, that would have done, had this, and that would have been a far more believable thing. Because you're right, when you first see them hanging upside down, you're first thinking, how'd they get there? And you're already losing track as to what's going on. Now, Mark wrote an interesting comment from back here. It's a bit of an overall thing. He liked the Sea Devils, and they did look good. It's like the whole budget went to them. The story was too rushed, and more emphasis should have been on about the Devils as a big return for classic monster. And that was the thing that even I found for such a thing about, these things that are iconic for the franchise, they've brought them back. And then within like 20, 30 minutes, they're gone. And I go, well, what was the point of all that? And nothing, in the end, nothing was achieved. And that was the problem I found. It's like, what do we gain from all this? And nothing. And so
it was a waste of a return. Probably the structure of how we're going to review this has changed. This is going to ramble about it. The Sea Devils and the Silurians were both sort of portrayed originally as noble and not evil creatures. In this, they went from mustache twirling, we'll kill everyone, to the classic, we're going to show the Doctor our base, explain everything. And the thing I really hate, where the Doctor and Yaz talk about their plan or lack of plan and defeating them and what they're going to do, about 2 meters away from all the Sea Devils, and the Sea Devils just go on doing, whatever they're doing, even though they clearly should be able to hear every single thing the Doctor is saying. So it came across as very, very, the directing was very bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you'll probably find a lot of people will agree with everything you're saying. Christie's put in here, biggest problem with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who is there were plot holes. You could drive somebody through. Scripts are rushed and rubbish, and they haven't put the effort to keep the show good. From my perspective as an outsider, as I said earlier, it's the second last episode with the Jodie Whittaker character, and it just seemed like it was almost like it was pointless. It was like, what were they trying to achieve? You could almost not have it at all because there's far more negatives than positives, which is unfortunate. But there are a couple of positives, and I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to focus on the negatives the whole way through. I think most people agree. Yeah, the thing was flawed. There were definitely some issues. It could have been a lot better, should have been a lot better, and it kind of wasn't. And otherwise you could just be getting negative stars right across the board. But as I said, there were a couple of good things that I thought were actually kind of groovy. I'm going to bring one up now just to show we're going to go on a bit of a tangent. So we're not just going to focus on all the bad things. I actually like the bit when they're underwater, when the TARDIS is underwater. Now, of course, the first thing you do is when you open the doors, you go, what the hell's going to happen here? And there's a screen or something apparently that stops the water from rushing through. And I actually thought this was actually quite a nice moment. And as mentioned by Gavin earlier, which I didn't put on screen, the no ship Sherlock, that's a very, very nice little line that they've added in. But I thought from visually, this was actually quite a nice sequence. So I certainly applaud them for that.
I actually agree with you there. And it was one of the sequences which was slow, and they let it play out, and they let the wonder of what the Doctor and Yaz were seeing sink in. which was one of the things about the pace of the episode was all over the place for me. It did remind me of episode 1 where they were swimming down to Otogunga City or whatever it was called, kind of that wonder. And the special effects for that scene were really good too. You could believe the TARDIS was sitting on the bottom of the ocean.
Because that was the thing, when it landed there, you're thinking, oh, can they open the doors? Or they just going to keep the door shut. They opened the doors like it was no big deal. It's like, oh, you can do that. It's like, oh, well done. Who knew? So theoretically, if you can do it underwater, theoretically, you can probably do it in space as well. But anyway, not to worry. So, yeah.
Yes. And then from that scene there, the ocean floor sort of breaks away and the TARDIS doesn't fall into the hole. It just sort of floats midair, and the Hassan or something like that, a huge monster comes up and eats the TARDIS. So this is another one of those things where it's not clear enough, because I'm a Doctor Who fan and I was watching it intently and my wife was watching it with me, and she was like, so is the Sea Devil base inside the monster? Are we now seeing inside the monster's stomach? Because it is a huge, huge creature. Or has the monster taken them somewhere else where the Sea Devil base is? And I guess they've gone somewhere else, but they don't explicitly make it clear in the episode what actually happens there. The other thing, which I spoke to a couple of people through the week about, one of the reasons the trailer looked good is because they used glimpses of this monster, and it is obviously huge, and you see it swimming up to ships, and you just see its fin, and you just see sort of that scene where it eats the TARDIS. Now, I was waiting, when you do that, there's going to be a big reveal where the monster actually comes out of the water and attacks a ship or something like that. And it never really happened, which was another disappointing thing. You saw the shadow of it under the water and a couple of quick flashes. It reminded me, if you were watching a Godzilla movie and you had all the lead up with seeing Godzilla's footprints and Godzilla like underwater, and then there was never a reveal of it walking down the city destroying buildings. So there was a lot of build up, but no payoff. What did you think about that?
Yeah, it just seemed like, yeah, you're right. There was an obvious gap. It's like, okay, what's that? What's it meant to do? And there's no reveal, and it's just left ambiguous. I don't know. Just, it was a massive oversight. Someone somewhere said, nah, don't worry about it. Who cares? Nobody needs to know, but even though you need to know. Yeah. And in fact, you may be able to survive the episode with not having the monster at all. Just take it out completely. Just focus on the Sea Devils as being the main antagonists.
I think you could probably have done that. That would have been better, because there would have been less emphasis on another story thread that doesn't go anywhere. Now, the big rumor, and I believe it could be true, is when they were making this special, they thought they had an hour, and then the BBC said, no, it's 45 minutes. So they had to cut 15 minutes out. And the thing that this has done is really affected the pace. And it isn't all fast. There are some slow moments, but the slow moments come across as a bit awkward because of what's going on around it. Now, one of the things people might not have noticed, and I don't know if you noticed this, Dags, when you have something that has volume, it moves slower. It's just physics. So if you do something, CG, a T-Rex is going to move a lot slower than a Velociraptor. It's just the way things work. Now, the ship in this, I reckon it would have had a lot of these sort of majestic sweeping views over it as it moved around. But I think they said, oh, we're out of time. So all of a sudden, this thing is traveling faster than something that speed could be. It could actually travel to look realistic. It comes in and out of frame really fast. And that kind of really takes away just from the epicness and the feel of it. So online afterwards, a lot of people are going, this felt really weird. The editing was bad. The timing was off. The sound was off. And that was one of those things that you might not have seen, but your mind notices when something's off like that. So being someone who makes films, Dags, did you think about that when you were watching it?
Yeah, it was very funny. We get to the end of it. I think the Sea Devil dudes have died or whatever, and the TARDIS takes off and go, hang on, is that the end of the story? And it's like, it's only been 30-something minutes. It's like, well, we're over already. I was like, where's the rest of it? And I thought at least an hour. So, I felt like, hang on, this is like being shortened to the point where it's actually a pointless thing. I can imagine a lot of people just never watching it again. With that in mind, now I don't know who this is, but Pen Maverick, whatever, says, so I actually did watch a Doctor Who episode. I got talked into it. I didn't do it by choice. So there you go. And I paid the price. And in the end, I got to the end of the episode and go, thanks, Aaron. Beauty, mate. Awesome. Yeah. Modern Doctor Who. Yeah, it's working for me. Yay, team. So, yes, indeed.
So there's some other stuff in there that didn't make sense. And when I was watching it, I said to my wife, they're not going to explain that. That's not going to be explained. One of them was because of the Sea Devils plan, which was they were changing the poles and the polarity on Earth. Everything was out of whack. And they looked up into the sky and all the stars were moving around and dancing in the sky because of the Sea Devils plan. Now, I imagine what must have happened there in the script, they said something like the Earth has started going out of alignment. So when she tries to navigate by the stars, they're in the wrong place and it doesn't work, which would fit the story. But the director's obviously gone, do you know what would look visually stunning? If all the stars in the sky were moving around and dancing around so they couldn't... Well, that's fair enough if you think it looks good, but you've got to explain why that's happening. And there was absolutely no reason for that. And it was one of those plot things that didn't make sense.
Sorry, I keep cutting you off. Mark has made a point about whether if they do an extended version on Blu-ray one day, it might make... I mean, you're right. It may be a will and it'll be a lot better, but unfortunately the damage is done. By then, Jodie will have moved on, and people have just say, no, you can't fix what's already busted. And it was just not good,
So basically some of the other stuff that wasn't explained or I didn't get, and I've watched it 3 times just to try and get my head around it. The Doctor goes back in time. She sees another pirate captain making a deal with the Sea Devils 200 years ago. She comes forward in time. Sometime during that time, the Sea Devil must have been turned into a statue somehow and got out again. And that pirate has been kept in stasis for 200 years and they let him out. So it was a really weird way of doing it. They didn't need to go back in time and do that. It just muddied the plot and made things not make sense. A lot of the characters I thought could have just been cut because it didn't go anywhere. That pirate then is the one that kills the head Sea Devil, and the Doctor gives a morality talk on why you can't kill Sea Devils and you shouldn't kill people. In the same episode, she gives a sword to Dan, who then goes and kills 10 of them in one swish. So it was very tonally all over the place as well, which just makes me think, I don't know if there's no script editor that has the power to actually rewrite things and make it stick, or if there's no one that cares enough to go, hey, hang on, we need to explain this and this and this, or there were scenes that might be in an extended edition that they put back in that make it make sense. But for me, look, I won't make any pretense. I don't like Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, but I do want Doctor Who to be good. And I do really get disappointed where, the stories are so bad, everyone sort of, non-fans who watch it will go, this doesn't make sense, this isn't any good, I'm not coming back to it anymore. The other thing which kind of makes the episode jar is where the episode does go slow and you get to the story, it's talking about the Doctor and Yaz's relationship, which is a thing that has been sort of almost crowbarred into the end of the Jodie Whittaker era. My wife was saying the first 2 series with her, she was like, oh, it's my fam, I like to knock about with them, we're all great friends, we're a family, I don't want the family to break up. And then all of a sudden she's like in a relationship kind of awkward situation. It's one of those very weird things where it looks like they decided they wanted to make it happen, and now it's happening without any build up to that. And I did hear that they couldn't cut this out and it had to be in it because this leads into the next story. So they can't cut the relationship stuff out if it's in her final episode, which is another reason why the action looks so fast and edited and the story seems to have been rushed along so much. And then you have these slow bits that don't really explain the story, but they're looking at the characters. And I do like when they do character stuff, but not at the expense of a good story.
The thing I found funny is that she said that Yaz was her either closest friend or best companion, something like she's ever had. And I thought, oh, that's a big call because, Doctor Who, the character has existed for decades, even in our time. And there's all these companions that the Doctor's had. That's a bit of I mean, if she had said, oh, you're the best friend I've had in this iteration or in this incarnation, fine. But when you said, the way it was worded, it sounded like you can go from here right back to the first Doctor. And I thought, oh, that's going to upset a few people going, hang on, that can't be right. There's going to be way better friends and companions from there. unless she's referring to the relationship side, as you said. But yeah,
it just made me chuckle because I thought the same thing. As a Doctor Who fan, there is no comparison to the current lineup with other eras of the TARDIS, in my opinion. Some people probably do love the current lineup and think this is good. It's just not for me, though. So it did feel, out of place and weird.
and that's what Mark said. He can always go back and watch the old stuff if he wants to. So, which
yeah,
a lot of people will. I mean, what I thought was interesting is that. So Aaron had said that you'd seen the trailer. You said, "Oh, it looked good," and as you said, you're not a big fan of the Jodie Whittaker stuff, and that's where we got the idea of watching this episode together, right? And I thought, okay, I'm prepared. I'm ready to be impressed. I'm ready to be blown away. And of course, that didn't happen, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, there could be people out there who say, I like certain bits. There are bits that they like, and there's elements they go, yeah, it works for me. But overall, it's a letdown. And as of now, I still don't understand why it was even created, because it's not necessary. You bring back an iconic bad guy, effectively, and then you do nothing with them. And that made no sense. Now, unless it's meant to lead into the last episode, which is the next one coming up, it's hard to say. But it was a very jarring, it was almost a silly way of ruining your own program and ruining your own doctor's time on a series. So, and ironically, it wasn't until and we were probably going to cover it anyway, the trailer for the last episode, everybody said that's the greatest thing ever. And things are bad when people say, oh, I love the trailer for next week, even having just watched this week. That's never a good thing. You want to be able to say that was an awesome episode. Oh, next week looks good too. Not saying, boof, we've already forgotten the one we've just watched. Let's get into the one that's coming up. So, yeah.
Well, that happened with Legend of the Sea Devils. The trailer on the Christmas special was basically 2 seconds of the Sea Devil coming into focus, and everyone was like, that's the best thing about the whole episode. And the same thing has happened again on this one, where they kept it a surprise. And we're talking spoilers here, but I think everyone knows that Ace and Tegan from the 80s Doctor Who are coming back. And on the forums and in chat that I've had afterwards, everyone pretty much thought the episode was average, but everyone's like, oh my goodness, they're bringing back these two characters. This is absolutely amazing. Now, I know I will love to see them, but I do think this last episode is going to be pretty bad as well. It's sad to say, I would love if Jodie Whittaker to have a standout classic episode in her run, but for me, she just hasn't had one. There's been ones that are better than others, but there's been nothing that reaches the I want to watch this again and again because it's a classic piece of television level.
So the irony being, of course, that you said that the trailer for Sea Devils was fantastic. It looked good, and you thought this is going to be the way to go. And you are right; they've hooked you in by bringing back a classic character, which is fine, right? The concern now is that, is the same thing going to repeat itself for the last episode, and they're going to hook you again with the return of who was it, Tegan and somebody else?
And Ace. The interesting thing is, my reaction to the trailer for the Sea Devils, I thought it looked great because you saw the monster coming up to the ship, and you saw the Sea Devils and things like that, and it looked like a good episode. This trailer for next time, I like Ace and Tegan. The rest of the episode looks crap to me.
Yeah, so that's the funny thing, and I've seen this happen with other shows where the trailers look great, but the episodes themselves are disappointing, and we've seen that with Sea Devils. The trailer might have been great, but the episode was disappointing. Everybody's now hanging out for next week, and the worst thing that can happen is for the last episode, even with Tegan and Ace, is a letdown as well. So it's riding a bit of a bumpy wave. What Sea Devils should have been was a huge success. People go, oh wow, this is awesome, regardless of whatever bumpy road Jodie Whittaker's been down. It's now going to finish on a massive buzz, and it doesn't seem to be heading that way. Hopefully it does, and I agree with you. Hopefully it does finish on a huge high. It'd be great to see, but currently it's a bit of a rocky road, and bringing back classic characters or classic actors or actresses doesn't always guarantee instant hits. So I'll have to see where it goes.
The thing is, I'm very, I guess, opinionated on Doctor Who because I've been a fan my whole life. But you just see stuff from the sidelines and you're not really a fan. In the shop, Doctor Who has been living on the goodwill of the classic series for a long time. What we sell when we get things through in a big collection is 90% of the classic stuff and 10% of the new stuff. And what's been interesting probably over the last 5 years, I've seen Doctor Who go from being one of the most popular shows on television to fans actually turn around 180 and reject it, sell up their collection, say this isn't for me. It's not just the series, it's the fandom as well. The last 6 months, I guess, since they've announced Russell T Davies is coming back, there's a lot of people who are now living on the expectation of what's coming forward. So a lot of people who haven't been in for a while are collecting again and started watching again. There is a very heavy weight on Russell T Davies after this era finishes to course correct and make it better, because there's almost a hole in Doctor Who fandom that needs to be filled by good stories, good acting, and anticipation of watching a show because it's good, not because you're waiting for this era to be over. Have you noticed that in the fandom, how the mood has changed in the last couple of months?
What specifically with Doctor Who or just anything?
Just Doctor Who.
I can't answer that question. I haven't really paid attention. But one thing I will point out is that a lot of long-running franchises follow a certain pattern, and I agree with you. So they start off with something original. So whether it be Star Wars, Star Trek, or Doctor Who, they go on for decades. New iterations come out. Some of them are successful, some of them not so much. But for whatever reason, the fan base will always, not always, but most times gravitate back to where it came from. And that's where the interest is. And we're seeing that with, say, Doctor Who, as we mentioned earlier, with the original version of Who. With Star Trek, it's like either original series or Next Generation. And with Star Wars, it's the classic stuff from the 70s and the 80s. So it seems to be that even though new products come out and they actually do well most of the time, the core love is always the heart of where these things came from. And maybe with Doctor Who, that's exactly right. So they can produce all this new material, and they have been for many, many years. But as you said, like from a collector's point of view, maybe people still say, you know what, I still want the original stuff. That's where my heart and soul lies. Younger people, I don't know so much. Maybe the things are different, but of course they're producing this material for a younger audience now. And classic fans like you effectively are listed as, well, you've had your time. We're now trying to bring in a new audience. Whether that works or not, it's hard to say. But yes.
I would agree to that to a point, but if I loved, the first 10 seasons of the new Doctor Who, and then this one came along and I alienated everyone, there's obviously something wrong because it's appealed to everyone and that appeal has narrowed. I think the other thing with Doctor Who, you say, yes, people go back to the classic original, but Doctor Who's been running so long, you get fans at every single age who the classic original from them is the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. So it's a bit of a different beast from Star Trek that sort of has 4 or 5 seasons and then a different show, and 6 or 7 seasons in a different show. So it is interesting because franchises do get fatigue, and sometimes it might be better to rest it rather than keep flogging a dead horse. But the BBC are obviously going for another roll of the dice.
Yep, fair enough. 2 things very quickly. Mark has just mentioned about we're all driven by nostalgia, which is true. Ironically, for people who are young people today, 50 years from now, what they're producing today will be their nostalgia. Try and wrap your head around that one. And Colin has asked probably the obvious question: has anybody announced as the next Doctor? Keep this as a short answer, please.
No.
You don't know. Okay, cool. No dramas. Is there anything, look, I've actually got guests here still. It's now like we're nearly 40 minutes into it. Is there anything else you wanted to cover off regarding the episode? I think we can all agree that it's a bit of a letdown and a bit of a shocker. Yeah. Be hard pressed to find people who really love it. People, as I said, people like bits of it, but maybe not the whole thing. Anything you want to add in?
No, I just thanks for watching and doing this experiment. I hope everyone enjoyed sort of DNA cut down with a brief discussion on Doctor Who. So thanks for being here, everyone who's taken time out from their evening. And I don't know if we'll even bother doing the regeneration episode. Who knows? We'll probably be back for Obi-Wan by then.
Yeah, we will. And for those out there, you can blame Aaron for sucking me into doing this in the first place. So come back after 40 years to watch a bit of Docu Who, and it sucked.
Well, I'm impressed that we got through the whole.
Picked a better episode for me to watch, could you?
Sorry. I couldn't. I'm impressed we got through the whole episode without a streaker running through the background. So there you go.
Yeah, he's in the other room, but people probably be running down right now. All right, we'll leave you to it, guys. Party hard, rock on, and we'll see you all next time. Okay, then, take care.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks.